So I just thought of giving you some more information to give to this. So this is the 2019 CBR650R, and it's very different from the previous model, which is the F, and there's a lot of new things given to it. So I'll just take you slowly through this video. So I have to go somewhere today. In fact, today is puja, and that is one of the reasons that I need to go to temple with my wife. So what I'm planning to do is I will ride and I'll give the video simultaneously. So if you see here, it's a few basic things to start with. As you can see, as I sit on the bike, so I find it's very comfortable. Looking at the posture of the bike, it gives you an impression that it's not very comfortable, it's more aggressive. Yes, it's slightly aggressive. So I am around 6 feet tall. The ergonomics of the bike is slightly on the aggressive side. So they have lowered the handlebar slightly by around 2 mm or something and pushed it slightly forward as compared to the F. And the foot pegs, which is there here, that has also slightly been moved backwards and slightly higher, so to give you a more the rider's triangle in a more aggressive position. When I sit on the bike, first thing which fascinates me is the new instrument cluster. So if you see the 650F, in that the cluster is little outdated, I would say, but still it had a tacky feel to it. But this is more about digital cluster, and in this digital cluster what you can see here is you can see the RPM meter. So I hope you can see this. You can see the RPM meter, you can see the fuel, there's a gear lever position here, the speed, the time, engine temperature, and the overall odometer. You have a select and a setup button. We can get different permutations and combination in terms of how much mileage is the vehicle giving and all those kind of odo informations. Rest of the things I will tell you on the go. So side stand is on, that's the reason why it's not starting. So it does not have a side stand indicator, but if you have a side stand in any of the gear, be it neutral or this thing, it will not take it forward, which is a good thing. So I don't think the relevance of the side stand indicator is actually required. Few of my friends, we planned a trip to Lonavala and had a blast. Again, when your adrenaline is really high, you really don't realize about what your body is suffering or anything. But once you're off it, like when you reach back home, that's when you realize, oh, my head is paining, or my neck is paining, or wrist is paining, and all these kind of things. So same thing kind of happened to me. I mean, not immediately, but later. After the ride, I realized my riding posture was not good, because of which I had a lot of wind blast. Because at some occasions I was going around close to 180, because I honestly did not dare to go more further than that. So, I was not ducking in. So usually what happens is, again, these are few things that when you have a bigger bike, you do it. So as a layman, when you ride a normal motorcycle or when you're not into these, you think, अरे show off कर रहे, देखो कैसे ऐसा लग रहा है कि MotoGP track पे चला रहा है. No, but actually there's a reason to it. Why you have to duck is because the wind blast is too much. Now I am wearing a helmet which is also slightly heavy, right? And the only point of movement is my neck. So the wind that is actually hitting on to the face, hitting onto the neck, kind of gives a big load onto your neck, which is not actually good. So you duck in so that the air sweeps above your head over the helmet. So that's one thing that I did not do, and I am like having a small upper back pain kind of a thing, but now it's gone. But still it was it was a little bit irritating. And if you're planning to do a longer ride, this is one of the things that you need to consider. So especially if you're having a faired bike, you have a decent amount of wind protection, but that is not good enough. Okay, usually you have an aftermarket double bubble screen, which people use it. From the front, one good aspect when you ride, the big mirrors that they've given, so it's very visible, and I think it's very practical as well. And the arms of the mirrors are also very strong, so it does not vibrate, which is a good thing. There's usually what happens is sometimes there is a minor vibrations that come, and that gives you a very blurry image on this thing. So it's pretty wide and very practical. So that's one good thing I like about this. Like I said, It's got a decent amount of front windscreen, which can protect to an extent good amount of wind blast. But again, if you are going something above 180 plus and all, you still get a lot of wind blast, and you really need to duck very much into the bike so that it could make less of a difference onto you. But if not, you'll have to change the windscreen. You'll get a slightly bigger windscreen as compared to the previous 650F and the new 650R. One of the biggest and the most thing is the design. The exterior design of this bike has completely changed. So earlier it had a single LED headlamp, and right now they are offering twin LED headlamps. And these LED headlamps are quite similar. They've taken the DNA right from the bigger sibling. It's called the Fireblade. And even when I went for the ride, in my personal experience also, I really feel it's very appealing. And I took this gunmetal black, that's the name of the color, or is it gunpowder black matte metallic? Okay, it's very confusing, one of these, yeah. So it's a very nice color, it's very subtle. It's got a little bit of highlights of red here and there, just to show that it's the race thing on it. There is another option which is the completely red color, which has got few accents of black and white. So one of the reasons why many people have asked, why didn't you not take the red and why the black? So like I said, I don't want my bike to be very loud. So for me, I found that bike to be very loud in terms of visual looks. It is like especially like a teenage kind of a bike, it's shouting out red. So I did not want that to happen. I wanted something which is decent, which is very subtle and looks very mysterious. So even my previous bike also that I have, it's a Pulsar 200, that is also black. There is a traction control which is given to this bike, which was not offered before. Now what this does is, it gives a superior grip, and it does not work for the front wheel, but it works mainly for the rear wheel. Why is this road this way? It was earlier. Oh my god, see, speed breaker. That's one nasty thing. Since I have a pillion, I really need to be considering the speed breaker. It's only got 130 millimeter ground clearance, which is very less. So if you're thinking about off-roading and all, it's not a suitable bike. So taking this to Leh, Ladakh and all, I think it'll be a big mistake. Because there are some people who actually take the sports bikes to these kind of places. Oh my god, another nasty one. In the front you have Showa SFF, which stands for separate function fork. And on the rear it's a normal 10 set preload suspension. So right now I think by factory settings it comes to somewhere around 2 or 3. And I haven't changed it because it's kind of decent enough in terms of a normal commute. So, but some people, depending on their body weight and also the kind of roads, they can change it any number between 1 to 10. I think the more higher it goes, it gets more stiffer, and the lower it gets softer. So cornering is a big issue. If you have a softer suspension, you always need a harder suspension, because the bike tends to keep jumping. Being a super bike, or a smaller super bike, it absorbs decent amount of road abrasions and potholes, so it does not give you that hard punch on your palm or on your back every time you run on a bad surface. So that is really nice and really considerate about Honda. Another thing that I like about this bike is the engine. So at the heart of the bike we have around 649cc, and it is churning around 87 horsepower for Indian spec motorcycle. Now the reason is, in the Europe international spec motorcycle, they say the figures are around 95 horsepower and produces around 61 Newton meter of torque. But here they have slightly detuned it. So I did once have a word with Honda in the headquarters in Gurgaon. So they said detuning is a wrong word. It's not actually detuned. We've just made your bike more adjustable to the fuel available in India. So apparently it's all based on the purity of the fuel. So if you put a higher octane fuel, you can still get that power output. So there are few people who have mentioned that they have done a dyno test and all, and they're getting something close to 91 horsepower and all. So From 91 to 95, it's not that far a race. It's easily acquirable, and of course if you put in some Acropovich exhaust and all these kind of things, you can again enhance and boost the power, right? So there are always options, but I wouldn't recommend that. This one's exhaust note is very silent at lower RPMs, but the moment you hit 6,000 RPM plus, it starts roaring. So you can really feel the inline thing. And one more thing, what they have done is, if you see the previous generation of the CBRs, the 650s that I mean, the exhaust end can is facing like kind of parallel to the ground, you know, like more horizontal, but this one is slightly shooting upwards. But it's a very smart move. Why? Because this particular thought process behind the exhaust design, it only makes you happy. Now usually what happens is people put loud exhaust and everybody, maybe some people, maybe the rider enjoys it, but not necessarily the people around him enjoy it. Braking of this bike, so it has been provided radial mounted calipers, and the braking duties are taken care by Nissan. So it's got dual disc in the front, and it's very punchy in terms of the braking quality. So one thing what I have personally experienced is, at low speeds the braking is decent, but at higher speeds it has a big bite. You know, it's very sharp, very precise, and you just feel that you're completely in control. And the front brakes are really strong. So I can compare it with other bikes also. One of the experiences that I found similar is on the Daytona. So the Daytona, when I rode that bike, it's like a missile that has been unleashed. No, it's like a warhead. It just launches on the word go. So that kind of a bike has got an amazing braking, and the braking, and of course it's not just the brakes, it's also the combination of the brakes and the tire. They do the fabulous job. They have to work hand in hand. So when you hit on the brake levers, you just actually feel that, you know, extra pair of arms grow out of the tire and they just hug the road. And the engine is exactly the same from the previous generation 650F. Only thing is they have slightly tweaked it for a higher power output and refined it to cater the emission norms. The rev meter, the RPM has been increased by about 1,000 RPM. So now that's one of the reasons why we have the R suffix. So it is slightly more sportier, and it can outperform the other bike by a very marginal difference. So don't think that this R is actually going to make a big difference in your, it's not like an RR. So this bike is actually bridging the gap between the 650F and the 600RR. So RR is a different league. I think it produces around 113 horsepower. So this is something that lies between. So it's a beautiful marketing strategy by Honda, where you don't want extreme sports and you don't want too subtle a bike. The other one is more like on a sports tourer, and this is something between a sports tourer and a sports bike. So the combination is really brilliant. Slipper assist clutch. So when you are going for aggressive downshifts and all, needlessly not hold on to the clutch. You can do that. Speaking about the clutch usually on the super bikes the clutch is a little heavy, of course, because it's a bigger engine. But in this case the clutch seems very light and very comfortable. Again, it's because of the slipper clutch. So Honda has ensured that the 650F has a very smoother clutch, and smoother clutch means less tiring, because when you ride in traffic you have to do a lot of gear shifts, and that makes it less stressful. So that is again one interesting part about this bike. Engine heat management is also phenomenal.
I'm a little surprised because, like I said, one of my friend, he has a KTM Duke, and if I compare the heat management with that, I think the Duke is slightly more hot in traffic as compared to this, because even being a pillion in that, I could actually feel that hot air has been thrown onto my legs, you know. That's a naked bike and the engine is very much exposed. Now why this bike is so is, of course, it's got a bigger cooling fan, but even though this is a faired bike, if you see the side portion, there's a lot of air exit ports, which kind of equals, if not exactly, but it kind of equals to a naked bike. Now let me talk about the seat. So the pillion actually seat is very small. It's reduced by around 60 mm from the previous generation, which is a marginal reduction. So my wife, I think maybe by now she is like kind of fed up sitting on the bike, but she does not have an option, and she's like, so I've come to the Ayyappan temple. As camera is not allowed inside, I believe it's not written anywhere the camera is not allowed, but somehow I feel that it could affect some religious sentiments, so it's better to avoid such kind of situation. That's why we did a small puja on the bike, and after that came outside. About half an hour, 45 minutes we spent. The best part about being in a temple is not that I'm very religious, but the temple is so nice. The smell of the sandalwood, agarbatti and all these kind of things takes you to a different level. This is a view outside the temple, and it's actually a defense area. And meanwhile, I also did a puja for my bike. As you can see here, there's sandalwood markings of Om, and it's been blessed. So now I'm good to go. That does not give me the liberty to drive fast, but still good to go on a blessed bike. The landscape is very nice. Thin roads, way up high, and you can see everything, like the whole city in 360 view. So with regards to the riding, like I said, the vehicle has a very linear acceleration. It goes fast. I have tried that, like I told you, 180, close to 180, not even 180, maybe 176 is the max I've clocked on this bike. I did not literally have the guts to take it forward because it becomes really scary after a certain point. But it lacks a little bit on an adrenaline rush, by which what I mean is, for example, first gear, you shoot that. This is about 6 kilos less than the previous bike, because they have done some weight reduction on the frame and also slightly on the swing arm arrangement, which reduce the weight around to 6 kgs. It's a big difference, and that's one of the reasons why you can feel that this is more punchy than the 650F, because this is lighter than the F and slightly powerful, which makes the combination of these two makes a slightly bigger impact in terms of. Also, one more thing, what I felt is when this switch lever out here, this is kind of interchange. Some people say that it gets used to, but in my personal experience, I'm not getting used to this. I don't know why, because this is a very irritation. And not just that, if you see here, this thing goes all the way up,
In the usual bikes, this portion, that portion is on the left and the other portion is on the right. It's easy to access. Here, when you're this way, it's very difficult to press the horn. You have to reach all the way towards the right side to press the horn. So it's kind of, I feel it's not ergonomically that good, because when I do this, ideally, even if this position I can still manage, but this design of the horn is kind of irritating. And sometimes you get confused, because sometimes when I have to horn, I'll be pressing the indicator and that does not work out. So I don't know if it'll take some time getting used to, but I really don't think that is true. It's a big confusion for me, at least. I'm planning to put this kind of a seat. So right now it looks but ugly. This is someone's stock seat what they have. They usually give it for bullets and all. So if you see this, so if I press, it kind of remembers, it's kind of a memory foam seat. Kind of remembers this thing. So one here and one for the beginning.